Wow, this movie is one hell of a find. I'm about to show you the wonderful world of Jean-Francois Laguione. Louise by the Shore came out in 2016, and much like other pillars of French animation, this one stands tall and strong, boasting an ethereal, dreamlike setting, beautifully painted layouts, a soft and gentle combination of 2D and 3D animation, a fantastic protagonist, and a wonderful melancholic story to boot. I cannot understate how much I love this movie. The atmosphere and tone Laguione creates with his rustic, painterly, and haunting visuals is something to be experienced for yourself. His style is completely unique and shows no influence of any other style in the medium. This guy is a true auteur, and he has created a cinematic gem that has since fallen to obscurity. But I'm here to hopefully help change that, because this movie is simply wonderful. I'm not saying it's perfect, it's definitely got its quirks and kinks here and there, but the overall piece is something I believe to be really, really special, and it should not be ignored. As with any underrated animation, I highly recommend it, and thankfully, this film is actually available free on Tubi of all places. There's ads, which sucks, but I was able to stomach it because of how good the movie is. Now, I'm very well aware that this is not Jean-Francois' first rodeo. He's made plenty of other animated films, including, most recently, A Boat in the Garden in 2024, The Prince's Voyage in 2019, and of course, Les Tableaux in 2011, which I still plan on covering at some point. But Louise by the Shore is by far my favorite cinematic outing of his. The simplicity and minimalistic approach to the story I think makes this one of his strongest works. So let's not waste any more time and get to discussing this absolute diamond in the rough. Louise by the Shore is about our titular character who, on the last day of her vacation, misses the last train for the summer out of the tourist resort town, Billigan-sur-Mer. She finds out quickly that she's got no means of contact or escape from this town, as a harsh storm and high tide soon ravish the coastline. From that point on, Louise decides to brave the winter season in a rickety cottage of her own making by the shore. This is where Louise goes through several stages of denial and delusion about why her family hasn't come to rescue her, and reflects on her life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's about as spoiler-free as I can get, because the movie is very much a character study of Louise and her experience living in solitude for a whole winter. To elaborate immediately on all the plot details would spoil the experience of seeing this movie unravel, because I genuinely didn't know where this film was gonna go the first time I saw it. So before we delve into spoiler talk, let's address the absolutely gorgeous animation. I cannot express enough how much I love Laguione's artwork and style. It's something that's hard for me to describe. His use of color, the painterly aesthetic, the way it all looks like it's on a piece of watercolor paper, it all evokes a certain nostalgia for something I never experienced. His work feels like it belongs in the recesses of your mind, like there's supposed to be something from the 80s or 90s, except a lot of his animated stuff came out in the 2010s. Something about his work just feels classic. It's a certain je ne sais quoi that's perplexed me about his visuals ever since I saw them. What I'm trying to say is, his work really captivates me on an aesthetic level, but beyond that, there's so much technique and skill applied here. The level of detail and subtlety the animators incorporate into the character animation is astounding. Both the 3D and 2D animation are incredibly smooth, realistic, and full of character. together. And the compositing techniques used to combine Louise's 3D model and the 2D world of Billigan are second to none. And this is pre-Spider-Verse. My favorite scene is when Louise goes about town and imagines crowds of people strolling about the nightlife, watching them dance, play music, and indulging in a carefree evening. It's one of the most beautiful moments in the movie. My other favorite scene is actually the beginning. It creates a foreboding and uncomfortable atmosphere that alludes to the misfortune that will fall upon this woman. And I guess there's no greater time to dissect the story, and by extension, the character journey that Louise goes on, as well as the theory and interpretations I have about the narrative. Here's your time code if you don't want to get spoiled, and if you don't care about spoilers, then you can make like Jesus and bear that cross. Okay, so basically my theory is Louise is fucking dead. Either she died in the storm at the beginning of the movie, or she's been dead the whole time from start to finish. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Unicorn, you insipid twat. There are clearly tourists that appear at the beginning and end of the film. The dialogue mirrors both scenes, and Louise even mentions that they acknowledge her. How could she be dead if that's the case? And you have a very valid point there. And if I were to steelman it, I'd boil it down to these being figments of her imagination the same way the Night About Town people were. Louise is established to have a wild and vivid imagination, even since her childhood, so I don't think that's too much of a stretch. But I also understand I could be totally fucking wrong. Maybe her family doesn't give a shit about her and didn't want to rescue her from this town, and she was alive this whole time to experience that cruelty and isolation. Either way, I would argue that death is the allegory this film is going for. It's a clear metaphor, and the film depicts Louise as being in some sort of limbo that resembles a place she's familiar with. Given the imagery, carefully worded dialogue, the fast passage of time, the talking dog Pepper, and the fact that even with the change in temperature, she doesn't feel at all bothered nor get sick, which she explicitly mentions in the movie, is a clear indication that something is abnormal here. If she's not dead, then there is some far-fetched bullshit going on. So I don't know for sure, but I am sure that death is the theme the movie is going for. If you disagree or have another theory, feel free to comment and I'll pin it or give it a heart or some shit. Anywho, now that that's out of the way, Louise spends a good chunk of the movie reflecting on her life, the boys she got involved with, the reasons why her family never came to get her, and reminisces about her old childhood friend, Tom, who's actually a skeleton of a World War II German fighter pilot. But we'll get to him later. At first, we're inclined to feel sorry for Louise, given her dire situation. But as the film progresses into its second to third act, we entertain the possibility that Louise may not have been the best person to her family, or in general. Louise didn't have a very good support system in her youth. Her absent parents dropped her off at her estranged grandmother's cottage and left without a word. And when her parents come back to get her, she runs off to her hiding spot in the forest and proclaims to Tom that she doesn't need her mother or anyone else. This clearly carried over throughout her life into her golden years on a subconscious level, because she even says at one point before Pepper shows up that she doesn't need anyone anymore. She's more than capable on her own. This sense of pride Louise has is definitely her greatest downfall, as we can infer it damaged the relationship with her family. There's even a dream sequence where Louise is on trial for forgetting her husband, children, and the rest of her family as well as half her life. The sequence plays out with a prosecutor pining for Louise's punishment to be never-ending solitude. And afterward, Louise asks her now companion Pepper if someone can be punished for forgetting half their life. While I do love the flashback and trial scenes, it would have also been nice to get flashbacks detailing how Louise was as a mother and wife. I think that really would have helped the film illustrate its point more, but Then again, since her memory has faded, it makes sense that she wouldn't even recollect her family. However, forgetfulness wasn't the only thing she's guilty of. She also strung along 2 boys in her adolescence only as a means to scare them with her aforementioned friend, Tom, and even pushes one of the boys to, well, since we're on the topic, let's get to one of the big damning flaws of this movie. So Tom's imaginary personality elaborates a forgotten memory of our protagonist. Louise broke the heart of Pierre, which pushed him to commit self-forever sleep off the edge of a cliff, only to learn that, oh wait, he didn't actually die, even though he fucking chucked himself off the ledge. No, he just wanted to traumatize the poor girl for playing with his heart. But it's all good, because apparently the next day they came to the same spot in the forest and they made love. I'm sorry. What in the ever-loving fuckity-fuckmas tree? So, what, that worked? Pretending to commit suicide made you want to make love to the guy? That's fucked up. I don't understand what this whole scene is trying to do or say. Why is this in the movie? If you ask me, this little flashback should have ended with Pierre biting the dust. That way it would support Louise's gray morality and her punishment of solitude for being a bad person. But instead, we got this narrative and thematic fuckery. Like, what the hell? It does not do the movie any favors. When it comes to flaws, that's really the biggest one this film has. There are other little blips, like Louise being stupid enough to think that a floating plank would support her weight. Dumbass. And there's also the helicopter scenes that don't really add much to the movie other than to illustrate Louise's need for escape from this purgatory. Overall, the movie still functions comprehensively and is paced quite well, given it's only an hour and 15 minutes. It's just that one weird piece of writing that always leaves me questioning what drugs Lagione was on when writing the script. What the hell? So, getting back to Louise, at the end of the movie when spring comes around, Pepper ends up leaving and she spends the next while completely alone. She comes across a mirror for the first time in months and realizes how old she has gotten and laments that may be the reason why her family and Pepper left her after all. It's a rather sad realization that Louise comes to. Not the fact that she's old and gray, but the fact that no one cares about her. So, she makes a pivotal and tragic decision. She dons her yellow spring dress and pearl necklace and submits herself to the mercy of the sea. From here, we witness what seems to be the death of a character. Admittedly, this also puts a hole in my she's been dead for the majority, if not the whole movie, theory. But again, as I mentioned before, the rest of the movie could still be read as an allegory for death, even if she is alive the whole time, which she probably is. Louise's body flows with the current as it appears this is where her journey ends. But thankfully, Pepper comes in at the last second to save our protagonist. What a good boy, who's a good boy, who's a good... And in a touching resolution, Louise and Pepper decide to live together and continue their friendship. Soon enough, July comes around and all the tourists arrive back to Billigan. But that doesn't disrupt our dynamic duo. They just walk off into the sunset, with Louise saying she's looking forward to autumn. But what does it all mean? So, we already established the whole death allegory the movie has going on, but what is the movie saying in regard to Louise's character? Well, this is just my interpretation, but I think her arc is about acceptance. Specifically, the acceptance of oneself and one's circumstances. Like I detailed earlier, Louise starts off rather deluded about her situation, but soon comes to the realization that no one in her family cared about her due to her negligence. She was so affected by this reality, she decided there was no better solution than to commit herself to the great beyond. But after realizing there was one being who actually cared for her despite her flawed self, that was enough for her to keep holding on. And in doing so, she accepted her circumstances and decided to stay in Billigan with Pepper as they created a new life together. We all make mistakes in life. Some you can fix, some you can't. No one's hands are completely clean, but that doesn't mean you're completely 100% bad or 100% good either. It just means you're a complex, multifaceted character with flaws and merits, just like everyone else. And you don't deserve to punish yourself for it. If Louise as a character has taught me anything, is that even with all the mistakes and fuck-ups you make in life, you're still worthy of the natural everyday beauties and pleasures that life has to offer. Whether it be a late-night stroll or a lazy morning by the shore, there's no amount of guilt or sadness that's worth ruining your mind over forever. It's a rather inspiring and relieving message. Also, neat little detail, while the English version of the film's title is Louise by the Shore, the original French title is Louise en hiver, meaning Louise in winter. This can be read both as the season in which the movie takes place, but also the phase of her life she's in. I didn't know where else to put that, so, yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I don't really have a natural transition to the ending of this video. I've never been good at that. I guess the overall message I'm trying to get across here is that Tentacolino is the best animated movie ever made. There's not much more I can say about this movie that I haven't already said. This film may not be objectively on the same level as some of the other underrated animation greats, but it's 100% worth checking out and talking about. While its flaws do hold it back, its minimalism and melancholy mixed with its hybrid animation are magnificently hypnotic. Lagione is a director I've wanted to feature in this segment for quite a while now, so I'm glad I was finally able to. His storytelling may not be the tightest airlock I've ever been shot out of, but he's still got a voice worth listening to. I highly recommend every beautiful moment of it. Happy Easter. Thanks for watching, and always remember to eat food.